A prominent NFL insider has the Rams as a wild card team for Shedeur Sanders. How the Rams could end up with Sanders, and also what are the biggest position of right now needs for the Rams, and who's the biggest Rams draft bust in history? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you hear podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do me a huge favor, getting close to 17,000 subscribers, so join the party, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. And as always, joining me is the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him at Travis Rogers. Of course, he is the Rams pre-half and post-game show host. He's entering his 10th season covering your Los Angeles Rams. And we've got a jam-packed show. The draft is fast approaching, so more draft talk. Today we're getting into the type of players they need for each position, whether it be role players, whether it be future long-term starters, current massive needs, things like that. Also, the Rams are a wild card team for Shedeur Sanders and the three biggest draft busts in Rams history. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. All right, Travis, so let's get into it. So you look at the draft, look where the Rams are at 26. If they stay there, if they trade down, it's going to determine the quality of player they're going to get first. But I think today what we're going to do is kind of go down the list of positions and kind of discuss what type of player they need at that position. We're going to start with the tight end spot. Now, we have looked at guys like Colston Loveland out of Michigan, dynamic playmakers, guys that could be 5, 10, 15-year starters if everything broke right, and possibly trading up for guys like Tyler Warner. If he's available, you take him. But I think the tight end spot is the first one where you're not just looking for a depth piece. You're not just looking for a guy that might crack the roster, the rotation. I think with Tyler Higbee, he's got more yesterdays than tomorrows. And you definitely need someone that can open that offense up more, too. So I think I'm looking for a future long-term starter that's the present and the future at the tight end spot.
Yeah, so when I was getting ready to do my first season as the pregame, halftime, and postgame show host, Tyler Higbee had just gotten drafted by the then St. Louis or soon-to-be Los Angeles Rams. And, you know, it was one of those, oh, okay, here comes a guy to West Kentucky. We'll see what it is. It turns out they got a long-term solution there. But like you mentioned in the open there, DMAC, I've been doing this. This will be my 10th season, which means that's his 10th season, which means they're still using a guy and haven't been able to find the next guy in a decade. I know that they, you know, last year at this time, you and I were talking about whether or not the Rams would have a chance to move up to draft Brock Bowers. I think that's something that we were both interested in. I think maybe, you know, considering what they got in Jared Verse, everything worked out for the best. But I'm with you. This is a position that needs a long-term solution. We've seen them try to do some things with Davis Allen. We've seen them try to do some things with Hunter Long. We've seen them try to do it with Kobe Parkinson. They just haven't been able to find that guy that's been able to hold in there. And I'm with you. This is not just a guy for today, but you need a guy for today, tomorrow, and the near-term future.
Yeah, I think with Loveland, what makes him so interesting is that it fits what the Rams have been kind of looking for over the last couple of seasons. Sean McVay clearly wants to add a receiving tight end, someone that can really change what this offense is capable of, seeing more 12 personnel, seeing a guy that can be a target for Matthew Stafford. And he's just 21 years old, too, so he's raw, has a lot of upside. And I also think, too, you look at what the biggest storyline is for this offseason for the Rams. It was bring back Matthew Stafford, make sure he continues his career here, and then you move on from Cooper Kupp. And with Loveland, you can almost have him do things that Cooper Kupp was doing, kind of at his best as far as a function of the offense. He's not going to be a Triple Crown winner or anything like that, right? I'm not putting him in that comparison, but I think that is kind of where you could use a guy like a Loveland as a guy that can do some cup-ish things while also taking this offense and raising the ceiling of it.
Yeah, this is the one piece. We've talked about this before. The everydayers will recognize this. This is the one piece of the McVay offense that we really haven't seen unlocked in a meaningful way. We've seen some games, here and there where Tyler Higbee has had some big games, but we really have not seen it unlocked, week after week, season after season. And you're right. I think they used Cooper Kupp as kind of a tight end light situation to do a lot of the things that maybe your tight end typically would do. So I think it's right near the top of the list. I think I'd be, unless one of those big names like a Loveland or, somebody else that is a big name, high profile guy falls to them at that spot. I don't know if they do it in the first round, but it is something I think high on the board. If you're drafting by need, that needs to be up there.
Yeah, and it kind of fits with what this Rams team has done. They usually get what they want, and they're patient about it. I mean, they wanted Brock Bowers. They wanted a top-level receiver. They end up getting a Devontae Adams. And I think you look at that position, that's one of the positions right now in the NFL where an impact rookie can come in and day one have a massive impact. Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers, even Kyle Pitts before he started to regress. You saw early on 1,000-yard seasons, a lot of touchdowns. So I think when you kind of pair that with hey, we're all in with Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just kind of if he will be available at that spot.
I think one of the things to keep in mind, too, I agree with you. I think that there is an opportunity for a young player to come in and kind of flash early. But everything that I have understood and everything that I've been told about the Sean McVay offense is that the tight end position is exceptionally complex for a tight end. That you really need to understand what it is that you're being asked to do on every single play and all the different ways that they're going to use that particular position. So not only do you need a great athlete there, you need somebody that comes in that's got a very high football IQ that can come in and adjust to that very quickly. That, we really haven't. Even Colby Parkinson was really kind of a guy that took a minute to find his groove, if you could argue he ever found it in the first place. And maybe the answer to that is no. So I'm excited about the potential of that position, but somebody coming in and right away hitting the ground running, that would be a very special player.
That's a really good point. Learning curve for that position in the complicated Sean McVay offense isn't an easy task. A Michigan man should be a smart guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But, I believe in him. But then next, let's talk about the cornerback spot. That's the other position where I'm saying, okay, give me a guy today and tomorrow, right? Present and the future, long-term starter, but I don't have all the time in the world to develop and use you as depth and learn behind someone. It's, hey, if we're going to draft you high at that position, we're going to expect some production as a day one starter. And you look at the cornerback room right now, Kobe Durant already in a contract year. They've been high on him, but he hasn't cemented himself as that guy in that spot. He definitely has had some flashes, has had some moments, but the team, they did say, hey, we're going to keep Darius Williams and then Darion Kendrick, and they kept both those guys. Akella Witherspoon, he's back on a one-year deal. Yeah. So the Rams have some options, but I do think that it feels like the time is now to, at the very least, consider, okay, we're gonna swing for a corner right now.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's probably at the top of the list because of what you said. This is something that needs to be addressed both short-term and long-term, and to have an impact guy, not just a guy that can get you through a season or a week or a month or whatever it is, but some guys that you can say, okay, we're going to put this guy out here and he's going to be our man for a few seasons. I think one of the exciting parts about the cornerback opportunity for the Rams is, if this defense is what we think it's going to be, Doug, if this defense looks like it looked towards the end of last season in the postseason, I think you could see some really good quarterback play because the defensive line and the pass rush is that good. The quarterbacks are not going to have a lot of time to sit back there and make mistakes. The corners from the Rams aren't going to have to cover a super long time. If Verse and Fisk and Kobe Turner and Byron Young and whoever they might add up front there. They got a lot of really dynamic pass rushing talent on this team, which gives your secondary, your corners in particular, a lot of opportunities to make some plays. So if they do get a talented guy, a first round guy, maybe they move back into the second round, get a second round guy. There are some opportunities there for some guys to make some plays because you're right. They've been getting by and it's been okay, but it hasn't been elite. It hasn't been anything near what we saw with the run that we had with Jalen Ramsey and a player like that. But finding Hall of Famers isn't exactly easy, but somebody that could really kind of hold down one of those sides would be exciting.
Yeah, but you said the key word to me, and that is making plays. They lack playmakers in the secondary, and they have things figured out on the offensive line, on the defensive line, and edge rushers and guys that can make plays there with the Jared Verses and the Byron Youngs and the Kobe Turners of the world. Mm-hmm. But yeah, having guys that can change the game on the secondary, just something that they've lacked, and it's should be about a little more than just getting by. And I think you look at a guy like Jahdae Barrett out of Texas, big and physical, can play in the nickel, can play safety, can also play in the outside, very versatile. He kind of looks Jalen Ramsey-ish, kind of the way that he plays the position. Of course, not a perfect comparison there, but as far as we've seen a big physical guy in the secondary kind of make plays like that, and he kind of fits that mold a little bit. But yeah, I think cornerback, tight end, those are those two spots that you're saying, okay, let's get someone, plug them in right now and expect an impact in year one. And another position that you definitely don't need in year one, but you could draft high, is the quarterback spot. And we're going to talk more about that next here on Locked On Rams.
Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into thousands of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple. It's all on your Fire TV, right? With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV shows, TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services. You know all the ones. We're talking Netflix, Disney Video, Prime, Max, and so many more, right? So if you are a gamer, this will be unbelievable for you. My kids freak out with this stuff. Hardcore experiences that you can share, and how all sorts of Fire TV Stick 4K can be an absolute game changer in your gaming life. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2 Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you hear podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams, Monday through Friday. Listen on the pod, watching on YouTube, watching both and listening to both. I mean, you guys are the best in the game. And definitely, if you're not a part of the Every Listeners Club, now's the time to join. The draft is coming up. This team is in the Super Bowl mix again, so definitely join that Every Listeners Club, and you won't miss a thing about the Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis, here in our second segment, we've got some more mind-numbing draft speculation, which I don't know about you, I definitely love it. I know some people are like, "I'll just draft already so we can see who we can get," but for me, I kind of live for the speculation. But Shedeur Sanders is a name that we're continuing to hear whispers about. We're continuing to hear the Rams, him linked to them. And ESPN NFL insider Adam Shefter, he says the Rams could be one of the wild card teams to take Sanders should he slip in the first round. Now, I mean, I don't even think you need an Adam Shefter really to tell you that that's a possibility based on where the Rams are at and the fact that Shedeur Sanders is a quality player that, I mean, before the season started in college football, you'd assume that he was a lock to go top 3. Right. Now Cam Ward, he's that universal number 1 quarterback taken. Sanders is widely considered to be number 2. But I think it's okay. What truly is the path to him slipping? And if he's not going to be taken by the Browns, not going to be taken by the Giants, and then it's kind of waiting around, okay, would the Saints take him? Would the Saints be a team that you're kind of worried about as a team that takes him? And then you also kind of look at where the Steelers are at 21 as well. Yeah. They're a team. But if he makes it past those teams, I certainly say, okay, at that point, if you're the Rams, why not take a chance on Shedeur Sanders? I would certainly take him if he's available at 26.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here. Number one is quarterbacks. I know there are examples of guys sliding. Aaron Rodgers being the most famous example of this, that you thought he would go very high in the first round. He falls all the way to Green Bay, and they make the selection that they did. We all remember the video of him sitting around the green room, and it was awkward, to say the least. But that is the exception and not the rule. Quarterbacks always go higher than you expect. Very rarely do they free fall like the way Sanders would have to free fall to get to the Rams at 26. And like you said, Doug, there are teams ahead of the Rams that have need. And you named the two, right? The New Orleans Saints clearly need quarterback help. Carr is not the answer there. The Pittsburgh Steelers need quarterback help. Even if you go and get Aaron Rodgers, that is a very short-term solution, and they do not have a long-term solution in-house. And Sanders feels like he would fit in those places pretty well. I think he's a really good player. I'm excited to see him go. If in a weird, bizarre scenario, he is available at 26, I think they would jump on him. I think that they would take the opportunity. I think what's an interesting question is, what if you get into the low teens, right? The mid-teens, and he's still there? Do you make a move to go up and get him to try and do that? Or do you just kind of say, okay, we got our list of guys. If he's there, sure, we'll do it, but we're not going to move up. And this kind of comes back to what you and I have talked about for the last several weeks, which is, if you love him, go get him. If you like him, maybe just see if it works out for you. And if you're kind of on the fence, then pick the guy that you'd like to begin with and let him fall even further. This is where it comes down to. If they got a quarterback that they think can be their quarterback for 10 years, go get him. If it's one of those, yeah, man, I don't know, then just play it out. And if you're just kind of doing it to do it, then I would always take the best player available on the board. Even with quarterbacks are the one exception. If you're not feeling it, if you don't think he's going to be a long-term solution, then I think you keep it moving.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, the big question is, if he does start to slide and he really does make it past the Saints, he makes it past the Steelers, then at that point, I think if you really see him as potentially your guy, then I think that there's an opportunity to get aggressive just to hold another team off. I mean, Cleveland could try to trade up, right, and get him in the later 20s too. So there's that as a possibility. And then Schefter had the Arizona Cardinals and the Miami Dolphins as another wild card team too. So you still might compete with some sleeper teams there in the mix that would surprise you. I mean, after what happened with Michael Penix Jr. last year, no one should be surprised by anything. Nothing.
It's funny you say that. Like, does the Penix Cousins things from a year ago make it more or less likely that somebody, because it clearly didn't work, right? That Cousins was dreadful and they had to move off of him and put Penix in there. Does that mean that they got it right? Or does that mean that they're out of their minds for signing Cousins and drafting Penix in the first place? I'm not quite so sure. I think you could talk me into either one of those. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe the two teams you mentioned, Miami and Arizona, they clearly have relatively young quarterbacks who are okay. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd love either one of those guys, but you also don't have a bum back there. It's not like you got Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. You got somebody that's, in Tua's case, is at least pretty good when he's available, although that's pretty rare. Kyler, I'm not the biggest fan of in the world of, but he's got some ability to be sure. Those are really interesting picks. Is Sanders better than
Kyler Murray on the Dodgers right now?
Yeah, right.
Center fielder. He could fill a need for them in center. But yeah, I think kind of getting back to the question you had about just what did last year kind of say, and moving forward, kind of what does that deter teams from doing? I would say it's quarterback or die, right? I mean, that's kind of how the league views that position, where, hey, even if we have someone as solid as a Tua and Kyler Murray, we realize to truly reach the mountaintop, we need that guy that we could take, that can take us there. That guy can take us to the promised land. I think that Shedeur Sanders in the Rams offense the rhythmic passer, accurate. I think
it's interesting, right? With him in particular, like from my understanding, everything that the Rams are looking for in a quarterback, they want somebody that's athletic. They want somebody that can make some stuff happen off schedule. I don't know if Sanders is that guy, right? Like he's more of a traditional quarterback that they've had. He's more of a guy that's in the pocket. He's more of a guy that's accurate, makes really good decisions. And this isn't a guy that's just going to break the pocket and make a bunch of people miss in the open field. That's not who he is. And I know his name is Sanders, and you kind of, at least, in me, you envision Deion doing primetime stuff, but that's really not Shedeur's game. I wonder if he's the type of quarterback that they want. Maybe he is. Maybe they want to keep it rolling with the traditional pocket guy. But I wouldn't hate seeing Sean McVay with a little bit of athleticism at that position and the ability to make some stuff happen when it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think he's not going to be someone that is a Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick, guys like that can really change the game with his legs. But he can break the pocket, escape pressure, make plays out of structure, kind of make some plays that make you say, oh, that's really impressive with that escapability. And they haven't really had that. I think that he's more Joe Burrow with his legs than he is Lamar Jackson, right? As far as just, you're not this. And I think you're making a great point with the name on the back of your jersey. Yeah. No one's more athletic than Deion Sanders or faster than Deion Sanders. So you kind of expect that. Like I said last week, it's not prime time. He's not Tuesday afternoon TV either, right? And he's definitely got the element of his game that says, okay, but it's in a different way. It's not just with pure speed and athleticism. It's with making great anticipation throws. He's tough. I mean, it'd be pretty incredible to see how far he falls and based on what, right? I mean, based on what, like, why is he throwing? But I will say, like, if you give me Jackson Dart in the first round, I'm like, all right, cool. Jalen Milroe, a lot of talent. All right, cool. But Shedeur Sanders in the first round, I can definitely sign up for that.
This is where my crystal ball breaks down. I don't know, man. If anybody knew for sure, they'd go exactly where they're supposed to go. Guys get missed and drop that are great. Guys that can't miss get picked early and are bums. It just, who knows, man. And that's why I like Les Snead in this situation. He's gotten way more right than he's gotten wrong. And if they like a guy, I'm very excited about it. Like, it felt like they reached a couple of years ago with Stetson Bennett. It's like, wait, really? And I didn't like that pick just because of the size of the player. But, quarterbacks, you got to take them. If you get a chance to take him, you got to take him, cross your fingers, and hopes it works out. Sean McVay is a pretty good jump-off point.
And he's so immensely popular that I was just thinking to myself that, you've seen some of these top 50 NFL best-selling jerseys, and the last couple of years, you have not seen a lot of Rams on those lists. And I think there's a chance if you were to draft Shedeur Sanders, that your rookie third-string quarterback might have the best-selling jersey on the team.
He might.
Him and Puka would because of the new jersey number 12.
Yeah.
But, I mean, think about that. That's kind of wild when you think about it.
Look, he's box office for sure. And if he can even play a little, then you've got a marketing win without question. But, they've got a Hall of Fame quarterback right now. The guy they had before that in Jared Goff, I think the further we get down the line, the more you start to appreciate how good of a player he was too, that, to try to keep that quarterback train running, they got to make sure they get the right guy, not just a guy that can, sell jerseys and look right on TV.
For sure. By the way, before we get to our next segment, did you hear Puka Nacua reveal the backstory on the Puka is Dead Instagram handle?
No.
So, he was on Edelman's podcast, and, his Instagram handle is Puka is Dead. And everyone's like, why is it that? Well, back when he was in middle school, he created an Instagram account, and I guess he wasn't supposed to, and his mom found it and changed the name to Puka is Dead. And he just kept it this whole entire time. So that's why.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
I love that. It's just, I know that this is not new, but for me, occasionally I'm just like, oh yeah, right. These guys they're the kids of the Instagram generation where they weren't allowed to have Instagram as young people is funny to me.
That is pretty insane. But coming up next, we're diving back into our countdown of the worst Rams draft bust, entering the top 3. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
The Nissan Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at some draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Rams forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut Player of the Week is Colston Loveland from Michigan. Look, Doug and I were just talking about this. They need that big body. They need the smarts, right? You need somebody that can make some big plays. And of course, you're always looking at that position, heavy duty, rugged, capability, confident, all of those things. That's why you got to dream big and go big with that tight end out of Michigan. And when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Loveland can do right here. It is clear that our Player of the Week is ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, diving back into our countdown of the worst draft busts in Rams history. Going to number 3, 2006, cornerback Ty Hill. He was selected 15th overall. Started 10 games as a rookie, had 3 interceptions. After that, just 7 starts. Ends up his career with the Lions. He made just 25 starts in his career. What do you remember about Ty Hill?
Not much. And I think you just kind of covered it. If you get drafted in the first round and you make 25, that's not even 2 seasons. That is a sharp drop. Look, here it is. In the NFL, if you're drafted in the first round, you got to become a starter, and you got to stay a starter for a right way. You should probably mess around and sniff an all-pro or at least a Pro Bowl at somewhere in your career. Second round, make the team, stick around, play, depth, maybe turn into a starter. But first round pick that started fewer than 2 full seasons of games, that's not a great accomplishment.
Definitely not. Definitely needs to see some more out of him at that selection. And then coming in at number 2, 2009, with the second overall pick, the Rams selected offensive tackle Jason Smith. And this is a little similar to the Aaron Donald draft where you get a bust, but then you also get a good player, right? They got James Laurinaitis, who, by the way, his dad, I remember when he was at Ohio State, they always showed him the animal, right? The wrestler. Yeah. And then you get the good player that helps you and that looks like a franchise guy. And then you get the offensive lineman that just did not pan out. And for Smith, he played just 3 seasons. They traded with the Jets in 2012. They had no starts with the Jets. He never played any other regular season games after that. He did miss time in 2009 with a concussion. Then he lost his job to Roger Saffold there at the left tackle spot. But, yeah, he played just 6 games in 2011. And when you pick that high, you play that many games, you're definitely getting B with a capital bust labeled on your career.
Well, like you said, it's so weird. And this is why the draft is both so exciting and so terrifying, is you got a player like Smith who is just a complete swing and miss. And then you get a guy like Laurinaitis later in the draft who's like, okay, we got a really good guy. And where they're pick, like, had you flip-flopped them, you're like, okay, that's just the way that it kind of goes. So, I know we get preoccupied with the first round pick. I know we get preoccupied with, what are you going to move up? Are you going to stay there? Are you going to get a guy like Verse who can just is an absolute home run, move up and get a guy like Fisk who can make an immediate impact? But think about all the great players that the Rams have gotten later in the draft, whether it's a Puka, a Kyren Williams, things like that, because eventually you're going to pick really high like you just described, and it's just awful, and you can recover from it. So it's not the end of the world, but that is a very bad pick.
Yeah, I mean, that, and then the next year when Saffold beats you out as a second rounder, you definitely don't love that. By the way, signed a $61 million deal with $33 million in guarantees. Those rookie contracts were, that's solid for him. So hopefully he invests that money wisely. Yeah. And then you're basically, you do all the research and you kind of look at all the draft busts in Rams history. And the name that is pretty much universal. Is 1996 running back Lawrence Phillips, 6th overall.
Yeah.
Phillips in 25 games, he made 20 starts with the Rams, had 1,265 yards rushing, scored 12 touchdowns, averages 3.4 yards per carry, dealt with some legal issues. And yeah, he ended up getting released. They picked him. The Dolphins picked him up. He played one season with the Niners in 1999. But yeah, this is a running back. So it's a position where it was different in the 90s than it is now.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, he's the GOAT bust for the Rams.
Yeah, the Lawrence Phillips story is an absolute, tragedy. It is nuts, quite frankly, that Lawrence Phillips had all sorts of problems at Nebraska when he was a player, had all sorts of problems when he got to the NFL. That this was one of those picks that even when a wildly talented player, that even after he got selected, it's like, this could go bad. And it went bad almost immediately. That everything I've heard about him and his time there was wild, just absolutely wild, that it really never was anything other than, cross your fingers and hope he showed up every single day. And if you're unfamiliar with the story, the life story of Lawrence Phillips, you can go on Wikipedia and find it. It is a wild, wild one with a horrible ending. That's not only one of the Rams busts of all time. That's one of the great NFL busts that just, and quite frankly, you can kind of see it coming. And this was a different time where people would get picked just because they were great football players, and all that other stuff might have mattered a little bit less. But yeah, Lawrence Phillips is a wild, wild story and a really ugly one, frankly.
Yeah, if you haven't yet, what I did yesterday is I watched a 2016 documentary called Running for His Life, the Lawrence Phillips story. And it was that kind of Sunday for me, nothing really going on at night. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it was Dick Vermeil. Dick Vermeil's always been a guy that kind of wears his heart on his sleeve. You can get emotional, as we know. And he was emotional throughout. And he told this story about a pregame warm-up that they had. And in the pregame warm-up in 1997, it was his 10th and final game with the Rams. The trainers, they revealed that he had collapsed on the field, and no one knew why. And Dick Vermeil is telling the story, and he's getting emotional. And he had alcohol in his breath, and he basically was known to stay at bars until 4 or 5 a.m. So, I mean, just kind of thinking about how insane that is. Imagine, like, going to a bar. I mean, imagine if you go to a bar and you get kind of wasted and you just have to be up at a job where you're, like, doing nothing. That's already, like, a tall task, right? Sunglasses and Advil. Last night was Mad Real, that kind of stuff. But imagine going and playing an NFL game with alcohol in your, I mean, that's crazy to me, right? And that apparently is what happened.
That's from another, that feels like a story from the 1940s, not something from the, the late 1990s. That's wild. And they're a little bit better at kind of sniffing that stuff out now and making sure that a player that has that kind of baggage and those sorts of problems doesn't get quite that far. They get them the help that they need. That it's a horrible, horrible story. Absolutely. But Lawrence Phillips, the #1 draft bust in Rams history. But that's it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. You can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.